this evening.
Sure, Madam President. I'll turn it over to Rusty Fifield, who has been instrumental in putting this program together and can offer the best summary on it. So I'll turn it over to Rusty.
Good evening.
Thank you.
So we'll go back to last month. You set aside $360,000 to provide some form of assistance to local businesses for a purpose yet to be determined. And over the course of the last, there's been discussion about how that might be deployed. The COVID-19 Economic Development Task Force that the City Council established got involved with trying to identify an immediate use for those funds, and over the course of a couple of meetings came up with the idea of this grant program that's before you this evening. I will hit the highlights and then I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. The program provides grants of up to $4,000 to pay for costs directly associated with adjusting business practices related to COVID-19. It was originally designed to do just reopening activities. So it would be technical assistance, new furniture and equipment, staff training, online presence, things that are directly related to reopening the business. We got feedback that businesses were really looking for something a little more flexible. So over the course of the last couple of days, we've expanded the language to allow businesses to explain why they need something that might not be specifically on our list. But the goal was to provide a grant targeted at specific activities related to adjusting business practices related to the pandemic, and not just provide money to offset business expense and to do something tangible with it. We're recommending that up to $200,000 of the $360,000 that's been allocated for business assistance be set aside for this purpose. We're proposing to create what I'll call a competitive grant application process rather than do what some programs have done where it's first come, first serve. We'd rather have people take a little bit of time and come up with a thoughtful proposal for our consideration. So we're allowing, beginning tomorrow, assuming that this program gets approved, a grant application form that was in your packet will be available on our website. People can download that in the description of the program, and they have until a week from today to submit those applications. We are suggesting that a grant review committee, and we would recommend that committee be Bruce, John, and Christy Bars from the Chamber, be set up to review the applications and make the awards so that we can disperse the money as quickly as possible. The description that was in your packet included scoring criteria. Those criteria really only apply if we get more applications than we're able to fund with $200,000. These grants would be available to businesses. The primary criteria, besides being in business in Hastings and registered with the Secretary of State's office and not delinquent on any fees or charges with the city, would be that they have 20 or fewer full-time equivalent employees. So we're really targeting it at small businesses. The $4,000 amount was based on discussions we had at the task force. At the time of our first meeting, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce had just come out with $5,000 grants for businesses, and they went like hotcakes. And so what we did is reduce that amount so we could preserve money for some future action and try and make money available to as many businesses as we could. That's the highlights of what I've got. We have a resolution to adopt the program should you choose to do so, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
So what I'll have you do is just raise your hand. I'll call on you for questions for Rusty. Yes, go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a small committee of Bruce, yourself, and Christy Barris, right?
I would have John serve in that capacity. What I'm going to do is compile the application for people to review and score and do some internal processing of it.
Well, the reason I'm asking is, and no disrespect for Chrissy Barse at all, but I am questioning why we've got somebody who is not officially affiliated with the Hastings government helping to make decisions. I understand her expertise in terms of lending credibility to the applicants, but again, she's not officially affiliated with the city at all. So I do have a concern about that. More so for any kind of pushback from applicants or anybody else saying, why do we have the director of the Chamber of Commerce helping to make these decisions?
I would say one, it's because of her expertise, and the other is that the majority vote still resides with staff and a representative of the HEDRA board. Concern.
And also, I believe it was part of the nominating process at that group meeting, the joint meeting we had with City Council, and just creating an ad hoc committee and moving forward with this. So it might actually even be better to have someone from the business community as that extra person rather than all governmental. I'm just playing devil's advocate. We can look at it both ways, but I think as representatives of the community, we'd all can do that at that joint meeting. And I think everyone was there pretty much, but that was my recollection at any rate. So.
Yeah, I had missed the meeting. And again, I've got full confidence in Christy. I'm just,
But I understand what your concern, what you're drawing upon here.
As long as everybody is happy with her on it, then I think we've got a united front.
Any other comments on that subject or otherwise? Questions?
Oh, thank you. Real quick, Rusty, do you envision any, I'll call presentations to the committee from, if you have questions from the grant applicants, will they use this and ask questions for you guys to ask them questions about their grant application?
I had not envisioned that. We certainly could. You don't know what you're going to get till you get it, and I'm hopeful that filling and scoring the applications is a straightforward task. It may be the best laid plans of mice and men create a problem in that regard, and if it does, then we will adjust what it is that we're planning to do to do something different. I would think it'd be more clarification of what an applicant's plan for the use of the proceeds would be than necessarily having presentations, but that will certainly be up to the committee at the time to decide if they need to do that.
Thank you. Yes, follow up on the platform or decision making. Yeah, Ms. Fox.
Oh, sorry, I have a different question.
Go ahead.
Go. Okay. Just want to make sure. So I know there has been a little bit of concern from the business community about what the funds can be used for, but you mentioned that there can be like a recommendation for using it for different courses. Can you expand on that? I know we don't want to offset the cost of business, but what are some of the things not specifically on that list that people could apply for?
Let me just look at the specific language.
Just addressing a question from a Friday afternoon call that that President of the Chamber, Christie, is on, as well as Councilmember Fulch, and many people from the business community have joined. So I know that's been a concern, so I just wanted to address it after you mentioned to apply kind of outside the list.
Surely. The description of the grant program has a list of eligible activities, and after you got that feedback and John relayed that to me on Friday, we expanded the list, but I think importantly at the bottom of it is an activity that says extraordinary costs directly related to COVID-19. So I think it gives the ability for an applicant to say, here's a cost that's not on the list that's really important to me, and here's how it's directly related to COVID-19. And below that, it specifically carves out that this is not intended to pay for routine business operating expenses. So I am hopeful that those two provisions address those concerns.
Specific enough and general enough. I like it.
We'll see. I still have to go through them all, but I mean, it should accomplish our intent of targeting the grant funds.
Thanks, Rusty.
And Mr. Balsenic, you had a question previous. We'll call on you, and then Mr. Gobush, you'll be next.
Oh, okay. What's the turnaround time from application to award? What's it?
3 days. Applications will close on Tuesday the 12th. The grant review committee is scheduled to meet then on the 13th. If everything goes well, we'll announce on the 14th and be in a position to disperse funds as early as the 15th.
Just a follow-up, how are we notifying the businesses in town?
Assuming that we're going to use two fronts. One is our own news and social media through our communications director, and then through the chamber. The suggestions on other ways of doing this, but I've just been focused on the nuts and bolts of trying to get the infrastructure in place.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Gobush, you're next.
I just wanted to comment about the process of the task force a little bit and how we came up with more specifics to what we're doing. The payment protection program loan is designed for helping businesses with their payroll and to keep their employees funding in that aspect. The EIDL loan is intended for 6 months of working capital for businesses to help them with maybe rent or different needs that they have for operating costs. And I think the task force, the plan was really to try and think outside, well, how can we help these businesses recover to the next step? And that's where we came up with this is what's going to change and what does a business need to do? Is it plexiglass in front of their employees? Do they need extra protection for their workers as they work with the community? So we wanted to open it up for that. And I think Rusty and John did a good job putting this together for that. So
that made me think of one other point that I would add to this, and that it was our hope at the task force that providing economic assistance directly tied to have to do now to reopen and respond causes people to think about that. So some of the requirements of the application will force people to say, what do I have to do, rather than I just want to put money in the bank that hasn't come in to offset expenses.
Thank you for clarifying that. Questions, Mr. Sinclair?
Just on the back side of the process, is there obviously some of this is for cost to be incurred? Is there an accountability element, or is this kind of a just trusting people to go spend those dollars as they've indicated they would in their application, Rusty or John? Sure.
There's a reporting requirement that goes along with the grant. We're going to require people to report back to us what they spent it on and provide documentation of what was the expenses incurred.
Okay, and that'll be post disbursement of funds. That'll just be a.
And we're providing the money up front rather than reimbursing them for expenses incurred.
Okay. Thanks. That's all I got.
Okay. Other?
Madam President, if there's
Yes.
no other discussion or questions from the commission members here, we do have a question from the audience too. I want to make you aware of someone who wishes to speak. So when the commission is done with their deliberation, if they would like to entertain any questions from the audience, we do have one person wishing to address the commission.
Okay, and I can recite that if you'd like. I have it up here.
Okay, and I could bring the individual into the meeting too, if that's helpful.
Oh, sure.
Okay, would it be appropriate to do that at this time?
I have no objection unless anyone else does.
Okay, well, I'll bring up then. I think we've got Councilmember Fulch coming in here shortly here. And whoops, I muted her. There we go.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Tina Fulch.
We can.
Great. Thanks for bringing me into the meeting. I just wanted to provide a little feedback from the Friday call with the Chamber and the Downtown Business Association. And so during that call, John had provided, background on the grant parameters. And the feedback that we heard from 3 of the small businesses that were on the call and they were specifically from the downtown, they all agreed that they wouldn't have $4,000 of expenditures directly associated to resumption of business directly and like buying, COVID readiness supplies for their clientele or printing. They felt that it would be under that amount. And what they had said was that they would greatly appreciate if some of those grant funds could be used for operating costs, in the fact that none of them had cash flow, the retail businesses in particular, during the shutdown event, and that they were in dire straits. And so they were looking for assistance with some utilities and possibly rent, just so that they could make it through this time and be able to open their doors again. When we conducted the business survey of our community, I think we had about 60 businesses that had responded to that. And the vast majority of them had said that they had applied for one of the 4 loans. I think only 7 said that they had, at the time that they were responding to the survey, had actually received a PPP loan. And so, and during our Friday calls, we've had 2 of our banking leaders from our community. We've obviously had Bruce, and then, oh goodness, the Pat Regan's son-in-law, I can't remember his name, Mike. He had also come on, and both of them had explained how there was a delay that was being experienced for a variety of reasons, and businesses receiving notice of whether or not they were going to get an application or an actual loan or grant. And so in light of all of that, I would, and I'm sorry, I should have followed up and sent an email to all of you with an overview of our conversation on that Friday call, to provide some of the insights and the feedback that we had received from our downtown businesses. And so there was general consensus that they would like to see a portion of the grant. I don't know, if we would allow like 50% or 25% of the $4,000 to be used for just keeping the lights on, but it was clear that there were tears being shed during the call about how important it was to them. And so I wouldn't take their comments lightly. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And so I don't sit obviously on HEDRA, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of this in case one of you wanted to the grant parameters. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fulch. Follow-up commentary and comments. I mean, as a small business owner myself, I feel the pain, although my doors haven't been closed by statute or by order, as much as I'm still allowed to meet with clients sort of like this or online or what have you. It's not like a retail business, but it certainly has slowed business down quite a bit. And I completely get where people are coming from with that. So any comments or follow-up? And I understand what the committee was going for and going beyond what was already available to the public, and maybe we consider if we don't have enough in the way of applications for the stated purpose thus far, we reserve some of those funds and do a second proposal with regard to paying bills, et cetera. So I'll leave that up for comment. Let's hear from you guys. Mr. Balsanic, you can go first, please.
Yeah, thank you. What I'm wondering, and I'm assuming that any other state or federal aid that's been received by a business is not germane to this application. What I would like to know, if you could do this in the application process, is to find out how money is going through the pipeline from the federal government and or the state. I'm hearing all kinds of things on the news and from business owners that they're not getting their money. It still isn't there, even though they're eligible for it. And of course, the individual checks, the stimulus money, that's another point. But could you ask so that we know and can report to our reps up at the federal level, what is happening or what is not happening with this?
Who had Mr. Goblish?
On page 9 of our packet here, I know, John, part of the application is asking each applicant, did they apply? And if so, did they receive the funds? And that's like 4 or 5 different programs. So I think we are trying to build that into that process, so we'll have an understanding of who applied for what and if and when they received it or didn't receive it. So,
well, that's great. I appreciate that. That's good to hear.
And I think Rusty and John, if you want to comment on this, with the clause or the additional application statement that says if you have other grave concerns or other areas that you need immediate application for the funds, maybe that provides us some leeway for these dire emergencies. If one of you would like to comment on that.
I think that people are free, given that provision for other extraordinary costs, to state their case as to why costs ought to be funded, and it becomes up to the committee then, given all of the applications that have been received, which ones they want to fund.
Perhaps we could clarify by one statement that this is the primary goal or objective of this funding. However, we will consider additional requests as funds are available, something to that extent. If we could have that included, maybe that would satisfy that portion of it. Mr. Vaughn, did you have a comment?
I do, because I appreciate the input, but I think, and I was going to ask that question, what do we do if we don't use all the funds up to 20? What if they're not requested? I would think that there would be a second round then, that we would open this back up to businesses, and then that's when we can adjust what staff has put together here as the reasons why we have the program. I think if we start to open up that other crack, you're gonna see it come from all over of reasonings why or whatever it is. I think we need to stick with what we got. If we don't use the funds and see how successful it is, then we go out to another grant application, we change this and tweak it for that next level of need, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Rusty, did you have a comment here?
I do. The timing on all of this is I think fortunate, because we will have made a determination of grant awards by the time that you have your regular meeting next week. So you would be in a position then to respond to any money that's left over and how that might be deployed.
Okay, well, I think that's probably our best move at this point, given the exigency here. So unless there's any other comments, go. Yes, Ms. Fox.
I do think the spirit of the outline of this grant is really brilliant, in that it really embodies how businesses need to adapt and change, and how things are never going to be the same. There's like a piece of it that needs to be innovative as well. It's incredibly critical to also fund or remove responsibilities right now as possible. But I like the idea of using any remaining money for that purpose. I think it's really well outlined that businesses are changing, and there's an opportunity to support those that are innovating and changing with the times too. I just wanted to celebrate that.
Thank you. Commentary or wrap up from you guys. So none, then I suppose we can entertain a motion to approve the recommendations and move forward with the funding program.
So resolution that's in your packet.
And we're noting that the resolution is provided for you in the packet. And I hear a motion from Mr. Vaughn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
And Madam President, just a reminder that since this is a video meeting, it will require a roll call vote.
Yes, okay. So we'll go, since you moved, Mr. Vaughn, would you like to go first?
Sure. Aye.
Mr. Balsanic?
Aye.
Mr. Goblerz?
Aye.
Mr. Sinclair?
Aye.
Ms. Fox?
Aye.
And I will also submit an aye vote on this.
Thank you.
And the resolution passes, so we will be able to, I suppose I could sign and scan to you, Mr. Hinsman, or stop by tomorrow.
Yep, either one would work there, Madam
Okay. Okay. Well done. Thank you to our committee members. Are there any other matters of business or anything that needs to be stated or shared for the good of the order here?
Are we having a regular meeting then this Thursday or next Thursday?
On the 14th, that's correct, Commissioner.
14th. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and staff has no other business for tonight.
Thank you. Okay, then I believe we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for your help for meeting and have a safe week.
Okay, thank you.